Awesome. So kia ora, nau mai, haere mai, to those of you in New Zealand, and a warm welcome to those of you joining us from elsewhere. It's really wonderful to be able to spend 45 minutes with all of you, recognizing the precious time and brain power that we're all dedicating into different spaces. So I feel really privileged you're sharing yours with me today. My name is Sarah Clearwater. I'm an experienced design strategist, and I run a small design studio called Reframer with the support of a small, wonderful team of 3. And I am also the founder of the CX Collective, which is a community of designerly minded folks who are trying to shift the narrative inside organizations from profit to people. And in that context, we are running this course called Navigating Human-Centered Change, which is really dedicated to designers and designerly minded folk who want to gain a different set of skill set to try to advance the customer agenda or the customer mindset inside their organization, their context, their system that they're working in. And to do that, I want to take you on a bit of a journey today. And that journey really anchors around a specific problem set that I've encountered over sort of the last 12 years of my consulting practice, but also in a variety of coaching conversation I have with designers and the sort of the narratives that keep popping up in the community. And these problems have guided a co-creation effort into a learning experience that we now call Navigating Human-Centered Change. And to start that journey with you today, I will shortly ask you to reflect on 2 questions. There's no need to share those questions. There's no need to type anything in the chat, but I want to offer you 2 questions and time to reflect on those. And then that will allow the content that followed subsequently to be sort of a bit more contextualized or more relevant to you. So the first question I'd like you to reflect on, and take some notes if you can, is what are the deliverables or the outputs that you want to see done in the next 6 months, sort of by Christmas? What do you want to put out into the world in the next 6 months? What is work asking you to do? What are the outputs or deliverables that you will be making and enabling by Christmas? Just a couple of minutes. Maybe another 30 seconds or so. What are some of the outputs or deliverables you want to see in this world? You are asked to put into this world by Christmas. And then the second question for you to reflect on is what are some of the barriers, the limitations, the risks that might prevent those things from seeing the light of day? What are some of the barriers, the risks, the limitations that might prevent you from putting these things into the world, for those things to show up? Another 20 seconds or so. Awesome. Thank you. It doesn't have to be exhaustive, just indicative, really. So if your answers look anything like mine, and then I think you might experience something like this. I suspect that the answers you've given to question 1 relate to what I call your day job. So they are the deliverables that sit in your job description, that you agree in your PDPs and your professional development conversations with your manager, that sit in some sort of design framework. That might be a journey map, user interviews, insights, interfaces, design systems, journey maps, empathy maps, any sort of map, any sort of artifact that designers produce. And these are enabled by the skills that we have as designers. These are the things that we're known for, and these make our practice tangible. Now, I suspect that answers to the second question I asked you likely relate around what I call the change job, the relationships, the conversations, the coffees, the facilitation, the influencing that stakeholder that still needs to come across the board and allow me to spend money on X. That person in risk really doesn't like that new copy for the website, but we really want to get it across the line because it's going to be more user-friendly. We really need, the marketing team or the development team to get on board with this thing so I can do this thing. These are all the things we have very little control over that largely relate to people and policies, but that are fundamental in enabling our design work to show up in the world and have meaning. And very few job descriptions and even less interviews or conversations with managers tend to revolve around the change job. You generally don't get paid for that. You don't get rewarded for that. You don't get acknowledged for that. But if you don't do that stuff, you won't be able to get to where you need to go with your design work. And to make things a tad more complicated, what also tends to happen is that our day job revolves around some sort of process that is fairly linear and sequential. For most of us, that's the double diamond, an agile framework, or if you're in social innovation or the public sector, you might work towards Te Whara Tapa or Hautu Waka or a similar Indigenous informed framework for innovation. But largely, it's a process of the beginning and an end with a set of steps to help us know where we are and where we want to go next. The change job, because it relates to people, tends to be more iterative, less predictable, more ad hoc, right? So you had this person from the dev team across the line, now they're going on parental leave. You were linking your design work to the new strategy that the CEO put out, but the CEO is changing. You were trying to develop this journey map for this customer segment that was really high priority for the marketing team. They've changed their priorities. This stuff is happening all the time and is impacting our ability to actually have impact with our work. And so, again, if your life is anything like a lot of the clients I walk into and the coaching conversations I have, we're starting to see a disconnect between the change job and the day job. There is a lack of integration of the two, meaning that things show up or come up like you're being invited to a project last minute when all the important design decisions have already been made. You're struggling to unlock resources or money, frankly, or executive attention for your work. You just don't get a slot in the SLT meeting to present your work because it's just not important. You are creating opportunities for your colleagues to understand your work, to review your work, to contribute to it, to collaborate with you on an ideation piece, but no one shows up or very few responses are being given. All of these are indicators that the conditions we find ourselves in aren't right for our work to show up in a meaningful way. And so what I tend to say to designers is that if we want to have impact with our work, we got to work on the context, on the environment first. And the inversion of that problem can also show up as you being, you thinking you're doing really good work and you've just been made redundant, or you're one of the few who've survived, and suddenly you got to make do with less people, less resources, and more expectations. You got to work in a culture and an environment that's toxic, where everybody is burnt out. A lot of designers I speak to come to the conclusion, or start questioning, am I good enough? Is my work good enough? Is this worthwhile? Should I be doing something else? And these feelings tend to come from having constantly negative or lack of feedback from your environment about your work. Navigating human-centered change is designed to equip people with the skills, with the mindsets, and with the tools to start navigating that change job with greater intent and with greater alignment along their day job and their core design work. So I'm going to briefly talk about the 5 modules that the course encompasses, which are also the 5 levers you can work on your own, even if you don't take the course, to start aligning better between your craft and your context. And so the first module of this course is all around understanding the environment that you're in and the role that your skill set or your role plays in this wider organization or system that you're part in. What is the nature, the character of that environment? Is it a, calm lake in a beautiful sort of environment, beautiful landscape, or is it a stormy ocean that you have to navigate? What are some of the indicators that help you understand the weather? What are some of the tools, like an umbrella, or a rudder, or a walking stick, that you need to be successful in your environment? So the first module really centers around understanding the landscape and the characteristic of that landscape to help you position yourself intentionally with your skill set and navigate it into a certain direction. Sense making for me is one of my most favorite tools or skill sets in our kit, in our tool belt, but very few people have had the chance to identify that as a core skill of a designer. Sense making is the practice of making meaning. And what we often fail to understand is that meaning making is deeply personal and deeply contextual. And we often speak to a set of customers, analyze some surveys, come up with our core insight themes and go, whoa, therefore we have to redesign the service a different way, change this interface, come up with a new product proposition, change the features around, whatever it might be. That path of meaning is unique to you and I, and in fact to each of us. What each designer comes up with is also different. So how do we then use sense making as a way of accessing the hearts and minds and motivations of non-designers? Because that is the job, right? As designers, we are like a team of 2 or 5 or 10 in an organization of 500, 1,000, 5,000. Sense making is the translation tool that brings people together. And what we're exploring is it's rather different modes of sense making, breaking, and remaking to intentionally find a connection point between you and the people you're going to bring on the journey who will be part of your waka. That then follows up with storytelling. And as you know, storytelling, we all say, is this great tool, is this really important thing, right? Every single storytelling course out there tells you how to structure a story. But I figure, and I've yet to come across a really bad storyteller who's also a designer. There are very few, because we are so passionate about our work that we tend to walk in the room with all that passion and all that intentionality. What we haven't been taught is which story to tell when to which audience. You all will have a ton of amazing customer stories. Which one should you tell to whom, in what context, to allow them to take action in a way that you want them to? that is the crux of the power of storytelling. Once you know what that person in front of you needs to hear, you know how to tell that story. So that's most of what we're focusing on in that module. I mentioned earlier that facilitation is such an important skill for designers, but I think one that we often relinquish or undervalue by stepping into the role of the participant. And as an in-house designer, we are often stretched between being a subject matter expert and the advocate of the customer, as well as being the facilitator of conversation among all these stakeholders who need to get to know the customer perspective. When we find ourselves in those positions, we're between a rock and a hard place because we can neither participate meaningfully nor facilitate powerfully. What we're talking about in the facilitation module is to help you make a plan and develop a decision-making framework around how to facilitate conversations that help you get people to where they need to go, and what success looks like for you. It might look quite different to the current, oh, I'm really nervous, I hope I've got enough time, I hope it's the right exercise to get the right people towards that thing. Facilitation is not a performance, but a lot of us have got performance anxiety stepping into a facilitative environment. What we're trying to equip you with is the right tools so you can walk in confidently and standing firmly in the shoes of a facilitator. And then the final module is reflection. And reflection is, I feel like, is this generous, nurturing, beautiful place that no one values at work. But it is the place from which growth originates, from which we are seeding our intentionality in our evolution as we mature our practice, ourselves, our teams, our environments. What we're sharing with you is a 15-minute framework that you can, well, it's a 3-step framework that you can do in 15 minutes, that you can do in an hour, in 3 hours, with yourself, with your team, with a large group of people, to start anchoring reflection and potential for growth into every conversation you choose to inject that. And we want to do that so that you can grow on the tools and not just do the work, run the hamster wheel, but never feel like you're getting anywhere. Yeah. And so in summary, what Navigating Human-Centered Change is an industry-endorsed course that is certified by the CX Collective. It's self-paced and is grounded in best practice adult learning, meaning that we are offering you pre-recorded content you can digest whenever you choose, but that is unpacked and used as coaching material during a group conversation. So you are always being able to flex between different modes of learning to allow you to move from insight to action really, really quickly. This is grounded in community. We've got over 100 other folks who've taken this course before you. Everybody is on the community forum. Everybody is there to help you on your learning journey. The next intake starts at the end of August, and you're looking at around $498 for an early bird access pass. And if you're currently out of work or finances is a real struggle for you, we're also offering a supported access to provide this to as many folks as we can. To give you an insight of what that looks like, so this is the forum. You'll see on the left, basically the 6 cohort connects are on there. You just RSVP and that syncs to your calendar. And on the right-hand side, you'll see a part of the course overview. So each of those little triangles got a video and additional learning material embedded that you can ingest in your own time. This is what we spoke about in terms of the learning diary. So everybody who's participated in this course has shared their answers in a course feed to each of the exercises. So whatever answer or whatever your responses to an exercise, you can immediately see how other people have interpreted the task and how they've responded to it. So you're never alone in your learning journey, even, you know, in between those cohort connects. And then, of course, I'm going to say this course is amazing and you should definitely take it, but don't just take my word for it. So here's a small snippet of what other folks have said around what this course has done for them in their practice. And more often than not, what we're hearing is people have got greater clarity of what their practice is, where their boundaries are, and how to talk about it. We know that it has helped people communicate the value of their work much more succinctly and with intent. And we know that it's allowed people to form networks and connection and meaningful conversation with folks who they haven't met before. So yeah, that's pretty much it. We do encourage working with a study buddy if that's something that you choose. And to do that during our first Cohort Connect, we're setting up basically just a connection session. So the first session is all about getting to know each other before we jump into the sessions and the learning. And by then, we encourage open conversation. The whole thing happens under Chatham House rules. So even if you're in there either with a competitor, because that's sometimes a concern, or if you're in there and feel like you want to share but you don't know how to, that's sort of the foundations and the psychological safety we're trying to encourage in collaboration and in conversation with you to ensure that these conversations really maximize your learning and provide as much safety as we can collectively hold. So thank you so much for listening. I'm going to stop the recording and give time for questions or any feedback that you might have. Thank you for listening. It's been really wonderful. Okay, I'll stop the recording.